Hello, everybody. My name's Milan Starcic. Welcome to Freedom Rising, a podcast dedicated to empowering individuals on the journey to personal growth, lasting serenity, and freedom from addiction. Tune in and join the movement. Your journey to freedom starts here. We neither represent, promote, or demote any 12-step program or organization. We are merely souls on the path of recovery with the desire to expand our lives and experiences and share them with you. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 26th Recovery Freedom Rising podcast. I'm Milan Starcic, and these are my co-hosts Scotty N and Kalem Moses. Today's topic is how the cookie crumbled from the bottom to the top. Would you like to start us off on this topic, Scotty?
My name's Scotty. I'm an addict. Sure. So I think just briefly, what we mean by how the cookie crumbled was the last, or the way I interpret it anyways, the last of my using career, right? Before I
How it all
retired.
fell, yeah, like how it all fell apart, like
Yeah.
that, the final piece of our mess that brought us to our redemption, really.
hmm Okay, so I I've fallen three separate times on three separate occasions, or maybe twice is better. But the original was I was in my early 20s, uh, or just about. I was going to university, so I had everything that I had ever wanted in my life. I had, right? I was playing collegiate level football. I was at university. It was a good university. You know, I was I was doing research, and as an undergrad, that's pretty rare in academia. But it was good. I had female interests, which I didn't have much in high school, and I had, really, I had a good group of friends. I had everything that I'd ever wanted for a long time. And what happened was I got cut from the football team, and I didn't have the emotional maturity to deal with that on a positive basis. And it was within a few months, uh, actually, I think a few weeks, I found my DOC or one of my DOCs. And I had no, because I lacked that emotional maturity, I didn't really have coping mechanisms. And using this DOC made me feel better. And I basically took it and ran. Now, the reason I so that started, it started about a 3 year process of going progressively more psychotic, more erratic. I ended up failing out of university. I ended up, uh, working crap jobs, crap factory temp work. I couldn't even hold that down as a job, you know, and my life was in shambles. It took, I mean, it took a little while, but one thing I want to touch on though is psychosis because that's very interwoven in my story. And uh, within 4 months of using, I started experiencing what's called prodromal symptoms, which are the psychosis before the real psychosis, right? And
Can you
you know,
describe how that felt or the symptoms of that? Because I don't know, and I'm sure many listeners would like to get informed on that too.
no, that's totally cool. And this is my experience with psychosis. Psychosis manifests itself very differently in different people. But I started having visual hallucinations, auditory hallucinations, both inside and outside of my ears. Uh, a lot of paranoia about what was going on, feeling of being hunted by something, being very uncomfortable in my own skin. Uh, as it got worse, more disordered thinking, inability to focus and study on some of the things that I used to be able to. Uh, and then when like I said, I was in my early 20s, and my stepdad uh, sat me down and said, drugs aren't doing you any favors, you know. And he was willing to take me to my first meeting. Hey, doggo. So the reason I wanted to bring up psychosis was because when I cleaned up at that time, the psychosis went away. And the reason I say it two or three times is because while I was clean, uh, my psychosis started coming back. So I went through a period of being prodromal to psychotic, to not psychotic, to prodromal again. And this last time, when I was using, when my last relapse, uh, when I cleaned up, psychosis didn't go away. So I don't know if that's an accurate enough picture of my cookie crumbling, or if you have
No,
more
I
questions
think
to
that's great.
clarify.
Yeah, and now, Caleb, do you want to tell us for you how your cookie crumbled at the end? Or
Yeah,
whatever
sure.
amount of it you want is fine. Anything.
Um, I think when I last, um, oh my God. I think when I last was using, what kind of really made that all happen was the fact that I said that I made a list of justifications, right? A list of a bunch of things that I wouldn't do. And as long as I didn't do those things on that list, then I wasn't doing so bad. And I think the 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 crumbling of the cookie or the crumbling of the pie was the fact that I crossed everything except for one of the things on that list, and that honestly that was death. Um, the rest of it, all of it, I scratched off at some point, right? And when I got to that place, uh, would have been 8 9 years ago. Uh, it just it was either I was going to find a new way to live or I was gonna take my life. Right? That was the fork in the road. It wasn't oh, maybe I'll just continue on or whatever. And don't get me wrong, like I've heard it said, unfortunately for me, unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. But I've had to hit rock bottoms numerous times. Um, my rock bottom recently isn't your lost your home, lost your kids, your wife, your junkie, all those things. That isn't my rock bottom. It's still my rock bottom though. And I think that's really important to point out to anyone. Um, don't don't judge your bottom with somebody else's bottom.
Amen
Be,
to that.
because if I do that, then I'm one allowing and taking away the experience I get from that based on somebody else's limits or um, experience in life, right? So the thing is yeah, I still have my kids. I still have my wife. I still have vehicles, a place, still making um, rent, bills are paid. Like, I haven't butchered all of that, but I can tell you I felt no better than I did when I lost all of it. That's how I know it's a bottom for me. And it's even more messed up now because I have all that. You know what I mean? Like before it was like, okay, it's easy to understand why I'm at bottom because all of that was taken away. What's my what's my excuse now?
Mhm.
You know, what's really going on now? I don't have these things. They're not lost, right? They're here with me. So why do I feel the way I do? Right. And that's been very much my bottom in this last year. And you know, I find that God, right, the acronyms gift of desperation comes within those bottoms,
Mhm.
right? When we're in the depth, right, it doesn't matter in what type of depth, but when we're in the depth, God will meet us there. Whether it's we're in the depth with Him personally on a relational side, or if I'm in the depths of suffering and I feel like there's nothing, there's nobody, there's any of
Mhm.
that. There becomes a gift of desperation, right? And that's why, you know, you'll hear us say in these rooms, we'll say, you know, oh, they haven't experienced their bottom yet. And the reason for us saying that is because they haven't reached, what we're really saying is they haven't reached that gift of desperation yet. Because it's that gift of desperation that gives us that drive in the other direction, right? And,
Mhm.
you know, I'd say that gift of desperation is very much a blessing, but we don't want to stay there either. We don't want to stay in a desperate space, right? Yes, we want to get there if we need to get there. But once we get there, we want to propel and we want to thrive, right? And
Mhm.
so um I say that because I I fell in love with the gift of desperation. I really did because it always gave me purpose. It always gave me a reason to drive, right? But the truth is in order to get desperation, the gift of desperation, you know, it takes a lot of, and you know, at the end of the day, it's a lot of self will. It's me having my self will, whether and accepting that that's what it is, right? It isn't, you know, this person doing this thing or that this person doing that thing or the world came down on me, right? When the cookie crumbles, man, you come to realize that it is on you. It isn't on everyone else.
Mhm.
It isn't on anyone else, right? It is you taking your own will. And and I speak from experience, right? I speak from experience. I'm personally going through something right now, right? And when it comes down to it, when it comes down to it, I can sit there and I can make up any excuse I want, or you know, and or simply tell the truth and cater it to make it seem like it's right for me or that I'm in the right place. But at the end of the day, it's because I'm choosing my self will over the situation rather than making a decision and turning it over and following God's will. Because I
Mhm.
can tell you right now, God's will wouldn't keep me away from people that I love and people that love me, right? But my own will, right? Um, if I'm hurt, you know, my soul's a selfish. I picture my soul. I picture my soul as a selfish young kid. And the reason why I say that is because I believe, anyways, I guess I should say I believe that the spirit is what's old and wise and whatnot, but the soul is the in between, and that's where the desires, the will, right, my thoughts, all of those things, that's where those lay. That's where that is. And the thing is if I'm hurt, man, my soul's like, no, the hell with that. I'm gonna go and desire and choose my own will and go disconnect, go isolate, right? The soul doesn't want to be hurt, right? And that's how I personally see it, is that my soul is a little kid that just doesn't want to be hurt, right? So it's me constantly trying to come at my soul, and I got a choice. I got a choice. The bottom line, I can choose spirit or I can choose soul. Right? Sorry, I went off there a little bit, but
I loved it. It was awesome. I've been taking some counseling this fall with my wife, and the first thing that the counselor got us to do was to, between sessions, to think of our two earliest memories of a good time and our two earliest memories of a bad time. Because what he says, and I'm not saying this guy knows everything, but it's been a really good experience for my wife and I, is that between the ages of 3 to 9 are when your needs system is established in your life. So when you go back and you think of those experiences, like when you're really young, of when you were happy, those are two experiences when your needs are met. And the ones that aren't happy are when your needs aren't met. So it shows you, first of all, what needs you want and which needs cause you pain when you don't have. And for your partner to understand that about you on a fundamental level was really eye-opening. But I want to pull that into the cookie crumbling in the sense that I was at a meeting last night and there was a big read about trauma and how trauma is never the same for two people, because you can have identical events, but the culmination of each person's life experiences are how that trauma is then reacted to, right? Like the trauma you carry is your reaction to an event. It's not the actual event. And so going back to what you were saying about, don't compare your gift of desperation, it's essential that you don't, because you are never going to have that identical reaction to somebody else unless you lived completely identical lives in completely the identical body. Like it's just never ever going to happen. And then when you look at what we have is a disease. Well, if you're at ease when your needs are met, then dis-ease would be when your needs aren't met. And then and that cookie crumbling is like all the needs to make you feel safe in this world eroding.
that's good. That's good. Yeah, yeah.
And I just wanted to share it because I didn't really know what my wife wanted at all. And she didn't really know what I wanted. Like we thought, oh yeah, we can make each other happy. It's like a Venn diagram where, yeah, maybe we're happy here 20% of the time, but that's only because we have the same happy at that moment. But then this other 80%, we just didn't even know about each other,
Well,
and
I was just gonna ask you, and in reality too, though,
yeah.
did you even know what you wanted? Because
No, like that was the thing too, is that I like when he gave us the exercise, he didn't tell us the point of it. He just said, find your two best memories and your two worst memories from like in early childhood. That was all we were left with. So it was a week of us skimming through things and so I had no clue. This whole journey of recovery and then also, being a partner to someone is a journey of self-exploration. Like where it's just like I'm constantly finding out about things about myself that I had no clue. And I'm also constantly finding out about ways to find out about myself. Like that simple exercise that he gave us. I can never lose that now. Like that tool's there. It's like, if I see a couple not understanding each other, I'm like, okay, well, let's start with the needs. Like he started with us, because it's certainly a good place to find out the two most important things to your partner and the two most important things when they're not there.
Mm.
Mhm.
You
Well,
know?
and it's funny because that's what they say, right? Recovery equals discovery.
Yeah,
You
absolutely.
you can't have discovery without recovery.
Mm.
There
I
we
agree.
have to. It doesn't even matter. This doesn't even have to be a message for anyone that suffers from drugs or alcohol or anything like that. This is all around the table that you cannot have self-discovery without having any type of recovery from what you've been through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think that, awareness is the first step of healing in any circumstance.
Mhm.
And the tools
Yeah.
of what we use all the time bring awareness to our actions and motivations in an undiluted fashion.
Mhm. My
Uh,
one I like the analogy of the broken watch,
yeah.
right? Because as an addict, I had to admit that my watch was broken before I get it fixed, and I was
Mhm.
always going around telling myself it was still right twice a day. You know, so
Perspective.
so it is perspective. But then it's actually just briefly about the cookie crumbling.
Mm.
I wanted to pose this question to you guys, and that's: do you find that the way things went down seemed custom made for your own personal health?
Oh, I was going to die of terminal uniqueness.
Hmm.
I like, um, so I'm going to do a little bit about my cookie crumbling. I'm going to talk about this and tie those two together because for me, it was like I spent decades. Like, I mean, I was in active addiction for 37 years. Like most of the rooms I sit in, most of the people are under 37, which I'm like so grateful that they got there before me,
Yeah.
you know?
Hmm.
But I didn't think there was any problem, like my sponsor says there's like good times, there's good times with some hiccups. There's hiccups with some good times. Then there's only hiccups. And then there's the down dirty desperation, right?
Mhm.
And I was like, good times, not even acknowledging hiccups for about 20 years, and it was really the last 17 years where I acknowledged a couple hiccups, like, well, like I was like, fuck, I really fucked up there. Probably scarred emotionally that person forever, ruined that marriage, maybe almost ruined my marriage, like, like really bad things. But it was the last couple years where I was lying about my consumption. And like, then that made it a dirty, dark secret. And it was like, as soon as that happened, it was almost like my proportion of using went up, my frequency of using went up because now I didn't have to like wasn't being honest about it. So I wasn't like it was almost like no holds barred. Like if I just was using on a weekend, it was like I wasn't afraid to show that because everybody was a weekend warrior or whatever. But then when it
Hmm.
was creeping into other days, the dishonesty crept in. Then with the dishonesty, like first it's lie by omission, then it's like
Mhm.
direct lying. And those direct lyings were like the mortal scars. Like they were like me taking my cookie and going, bye bye, Milan. Bye bye, Milan. Hello, Milan addict. Hello, Milan addict. You know? And I
Hmm.
thought some friends and my wife and daughter had an intervention about 15 months before I actually stopped. And I remember sitting in the intervention thinking, how was I going to get away with using later that day? And them not noticing. That thought actually crossed my mind in there. I was
Mhm.
like plotting in there. But the thing is that then I looked into programs. Then I looked into like this and that, and I was like, well, nobody uses like this and drinks like that and has this exact same thing. And it was like I was going to die of terminal uniqueness because I thought nobody would ever fucking understand me. And what I
Same.
didn't know and didn't understand at the time was that addiction is a disease, and that disease has so many faces, but manifests in identical ways. You know, like it, it, it's like how many colors of cars there are and shapes in cars, but I can get from this town to that town in any of them. And that's kind of like what addiction's like. It doesn't matter what package it comes in. It's the fact that you're going from here to no control, and it doesn't matter the vehicle, but I was determined to die of terminal uniqueness. And so I felt that I was like on this special path. And I really, really did they talk about hope in the program. It was the topic at last night's in-person meeting I was at. And I'm telling you, man, for the last years of me using, I hoped I could control it. I had real hope. In fact, at the beginning of my fight with it, I had faith that I could control it. And I lost all faith and lost all hope. And that was, for me, right at that point, I had no more faith in my control, and I had no more hope that I was going to win without dying, because my fucking heart stopped in that hospital, and that was it for me. I'm going to pass this one to Kalem now.
Hmm. Can you reiterate a little bit?
Scotty, you want to repeat the question?
Yeah.
So, okay, so my question is, like, was the method of the fall, right?
Hey,
Was
right.
that
Custom made. Yeah. Yeah.
was that
Okay.
like tailor made for you?
Yeah. So, actually, it was my sponsor, uh, and I'm going to try not to use the language that was used, but he said that it was the perfect butt whooping, right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't any less because he would have kept on going, but it wasn't any more because he would have crumbled and folded, right? That would have been it. So, yeah, 100%. It was custom made. The thing is, and again, I didn't understand it at the time, and I didn't understand it until just recently. But God knew exactly my breaking point, and not only that, the leverage point, right? Not that I say God causes all of it to happen, but He allows these things to happen. I mean, without it happening, I wouldn't have pushed for a better life, right? Just put it that way, right? If he didn't allow those things to happen in my life, he knew very well that if there just applied enough pressure, um, in such a way, I would find myself in recovery and I would find myself in the rooms. And, who knows if my kids, my wife, would have that opportunity to be able to enter into today, right? You just don't know. But when it comes to feeling tailor made, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'd even say, again, polling the recent bottom, if you will. I feel 100% it's all tailor made, right? It's not only that, like, my bottom today it's a lot, like it's financially, it's my health, again, it's not that I lost my kids, lost my wife, right? But it's all these other things that mean very much to me
Mm-hmm.
that I'd never actually put a whole lot of thought or thought or concern to it, right? But the funny thing is financially, okay, I'm in a very, 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 very uncomfortable place right now. And I'm watching bills and stuff like that and credit cards stack, right? And I'm like, man, like this is very uncomfortable because God, if it's just me that has to look after this, I'm screwed. Put it this way. Put it that way. If I'm relying just on my own, I am screwed. So it has to be him, right? It's custom made also because this didn't just happen like that, right? I went from working the rigs, what was it, 2, 3 years ago, and he broke me into carpentry work, which was a lot less than what I was used to. And still, I somehow got very lucky that I got paid very high for the experience and knowledge that I had in carpentry. Uh, and then not only that, like going through an experience where, I'd go for a portion of time without getting paid. Right. And so it was constantly a breaking it down throughout. And I could see that now. At the
Mhm.
time, it was hard. It was, wanted to bang my head against the wall. Like, what is going on right now? Right. I've been without work for almost 6 months now. Actually, yeah. Last day today, right? 6 months since June. This is the longest I've never worked in my life since I've started it as a teenager. Okay. In hindsight, you'd be like, well, why? What's going on? Like everyone always wants to find out the answer to the problem or the solution to it. Okay. But what I truly feel is something that myself and a lot of people around me haven't even really been able to notice or accept is that, I have a loved one that is very much struggling with alcohol, right? And it very much might be that I have to step up and look after the kids, right? By myself. Now, here's the thing. The whole time I'm sitting there and I'm praying 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 for a job. And it just seems like nothing was coming. And I kept on telling people this, and they're like, "Oh, are you sure this is God? Are you sure that's God? Maybe God wants you to really push in there, and maybe you're not getting a job because you're not trying hard enough." And all of it seemed a little off to me. Here's the thing: I just realized if I took a job at any point of this time in the last 6 months, there's a very good chance I would not survive taking my 4 kids by myself. Because here's the thing, I haven't been a stay-at-home dad. I haven't been that parent yet in my recovery, in my life, to be able to sit here, take him to school, deal with all the teacher stuff. Like that's stuff I haven't done. When I was in active addiction and we had our kids before we lost custody of them, I was never around. I was the drug dealer that was out in the streets, always getting the dope, always getting the money, whatever it was. I was never home. Then I got into recovery. Then we got it back, our kids back, and I was never home because I was always working. Right. So here's the thing. You want to talk about custom made. I 100% believe that every situation that we go through is custom made for us. Right. Because again, I'm sitting here and I'm trying to tell people, like, I swear this is God's will. I don't understand it. Right. And everyone's trying to tell me, oh, it's God's will that you sit there and you provide for your family. And I'm like, I'm not saying that it isn't.
Mhm.
But for whatever reason, this feels like this is where I'm supposed to be at.
Mhm.
And now, like I said, coming into the new year, there's a very good chance there might be a month or two of just me and the kids. And you know what? I'm grateful for that. As messed up as I've been myself in this last couple weeks, even to have my partner, the one that I love very greatly, leave and go get some help and possibly get help with dealing with trauma. Because here's the thing, I know I can't help that person, right? But this has all been tailor made for her. Everything. right from the like this whole bit. Even me, my experience not working, all of that stuff, that is all tailored and custom made for her to push her to get her to that place. Right. And so it's actually it's a very beautiful thing when you get to just see a little smidgen of the whole masterpiece, the puzzle all come together. Because then you realize this had a part, that had a part, this had a part, that had a part. And without any one of those things, it just wouldn't be enough or it would have been too much. But it was
Mhm.
all just perfectly placed to the point that really propelled that better life.
Mhm.
I
I
love
like
that,
that. I
Caleb.
have a
Scotty, you're
thought.
up. You got to answer your own question.
Okay, well, I have a follow-up question too, but yeah, I think that so I'm a reasonably smart guy. I know I'm above average intelligence, but when I was in high school, when I was still a weekend warrior, um, I identified with my mind very much. Like academic success was, and my ego was very wrapped up in that, you know, as I really identified as being a free thinker, and I was an atheist at the time because I thought that you could outsmart God if you had the chance. And and for me, my downfall was so wrapped up in this um, the fracturing of my mind. Right, that's what drugs did to my mind. They fractured it, and I think that was tailor made for me too, because that was where I carried most of my pride and my in hindsight hubris, you know, and it was fucking painful. But that leads me into my follow up. Hope you don't mind. I'm going to do a follow up, Milan. But
You know what, Scotty? I love that you're taking charge of the questions this time. Like, it's just, you know what?
Give him a break.
I think it's great. I feel like it makes it just more round robin and the energy. I'm stoked. So
Yeah.
trust that you could ask 500 questions.
yeah, solid. So one of the things that I learned in recovery that helped me a lot was gratitude. Right.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So now, and gratitude's played a huge role because I find that if I'm in a spot emotionally or mentally or spiritually, if I can practice a bit of gratitude, it can swing things around for me, right? So now there's two parts to this. The first is there's a Rage Against the Machine quote. It goes, "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present now controls the past." Okay, and I want to tie that with Um, and this is from an interview with Stephen Colbert and Anderson Cooper, which is and it's a really good. So you can't cherry pick what you're grateful for, right? In the context
Mhm.
of the interview, Stephen Colbert had his dad and older brothers die when he was like 8 years old or something. Car crash, plane crash, something tragic and sudden. And he had to come to a point in his life where he was actually grateful for that. And I find that with recovery, if I'm grateful for the now, then I have to be grateful for my past. And that's hard. That's a hard pill to swallow, but it's also a very freeing pill, right? For me, the mental health side of things, I carried this big chip on my shoulder for a long time because of that. But I had to let that go and I had to say, you know what? Uh, my gratitude has to stretch over my entire story, right? And that ties in with that being tailor made, right? So I don't know. That's just kind of a thought that I had that I
I got
thought was
some good
interesting.
thoughts on that. So,
Mhm.
my dad was paralyzed when I was conceived with MS. He died when I was 4. I grew up without a dad with a mom who had to work full time. Definitely raised myself in a really rough city. Um, was forced to fight at least once a week in my life from 3 years old to grade 10. Um, like, so for me, and like the things that I can think of that I'm grateful for now that I hated growing up. And when I was 25, the first house I built burned down. I had no insurance. I lost every single possession in my life within an hour and 20 minutes. Looking back, I am grateful that I was forced to be independent as a child. It made me a better problem solver in life. It made me more adaptable. I'm grateful that I had to fight all those times because now I am not afraid. You know, like my wife, I remember we were lying in bed. This was like about 10 years after we were together. And she was just like, when you're walking home from somewhere in the dark and you're afraid? And I was like, no, I've never had that feeling in my life. Like, never, like, I just always knew that I could fight well enough to get away, even if I couldn't kill. And there, like, it sucked being young and being afraid, but now that's been transformed into a strength. And then, I put everything into that first place I built. I cut the trees down, I milled the wood, I built the entire place with a chainsaw. I had no power. And when I lost that, it was like I lost like the greatest thing I ever built in my life. Like, if you've never put your head down in shelter that you've provided from nature, like, you'll never understand that feeling because it is a unique feeling, that it's like something in being a man and wanting to provide home is like I always say to my wife, I make a house and she makes it home. But there's something in me that wants to make sure we have that fucking house. And when that was taken away, first of all, possessions don't define me, was the lesson I learned there. And that no matter where I go in life, like how fucking nothing I have, I can rebuild my life. That I'm an adaptable, surviving creature. And so, you know, um, that that house burning down, that took me about 10 years for that lesson, to see the lesson. And,
Mm.
and even my addiction, like, if I didn't have my addiction, I don't regret all the times I had. I do regret some of the pain I caused other people, but it also brought me to here. And I wouldn't trade my life in recovery for anything. Like, I really truly am experiencing recovery fever. Being inside this life and working these steps and being inside the community and being of service, and also having a great sponsor and having some great recovery friends like you guys. Like, this conversation here today is like so fucking exciting to me. We wouldn't be here if we all didn't get fucking stepped on by our own addictions, right? Like, we never would have even met. Like, we may never meet in person, and you guys are my brothers. Like, isn't that totally amazing that our addiction brought us to this? And I've always, um, starting about 8 years ago, I started writing affirmations in the morning. And then there's be periods where my addiction was taking over and I would stop because I was burned out and I was tired and I wasn't awake and on my program of just my own program in the morning, not even the program in recovery. When I would restart, within 3 to 5 days, miracles would happen from those affirmations. So much so that my daughter got a tattoo about it. Like, she was just like, Dad, this is like magic. She's like, just write that shit down every day. You know, my first sponsor said, gratitude is a verb. He's like, don't just say you're grateful for something. Like, look at the sun. If the sun is giving you joy, and let it hit your smiling face. If you love your dogs, be walking your dogs. If you love your family, be of service to that family or be present for that family. But, when he always pounded that in, and I always loved that. And that's just like, now, um, I start my day with a gratitude list. And that list is generally, I try not to ever make my gratitude list like the I'll be happy when list. You know,
Mm,
like I never try to make my gratitude list about the future because my happiness now is not contingent. My gratitude now is not contingent on my expectation of a result. And that
mm,
is something that it's like, you know, I just don't want to be living there. Like I don't want to be living in a future happiness because that's for sure a resentment inside my brain. So
mm.
that's my take on that point. I really feel like, man, I'm really glad you brought that up because I sure feel connected with that. Love you, Scotty. Caleb?
Thanks, bro.
Sorry again. Sorry if there's a bunch of background noise, but
There's none, zero, just so you know.
none right now. Okay,
None.
that's good. It might change in a bit, but so I guess I'm tracking a lot of conversation. But what was the question? I guess again, just for
Uh, can you cherry pick what you're grateful for?
cherry picking for what you're grateful for.
Like, can you? Or is it if you're truly grateful for the present, do you have to? Are you grateful for all of the past? Like, have you come to terms with it, or different things like that?
Hmm. I mean, yeah. If you want to be honest, like you can cherry pick, right? It's very easy to cherry pick what you're grateful for. Um, does it do you any good? No,
Hmm.
right? And I think that's something that it sort of like what Milan was saying. A lot of times I don't realize what I'm truly grateful for until years later, until I start to learn and understand what I've been through, right? Until the pieces have been put together. Um, Honestly, that's why I learned today in my walk, even when I don't understand, I'm gonna praise God and I'm gonna thank God for my situations, even when I'm in the deep mud, whatever it is. I don't understand it. Like put it this way, uh, before we moved before we moved up to Fort St. John here, I was in a Dodge Dart, right? A Dodge Dart. That's a five-seater vehicle. Now, great on gas. That's what I use to commute from Fort St. John to Regina, Saskatchewan. So anyone that doesn't know, that's a 14 and a half hour trip, and I would do that in one bang, because I'd only have the weekend to do so. Uh, I got into an accident. Now, I swear, with that accident, it was on a big, uh, I guess it would be forget the type of road it would be considered, but it would be a like an artery to a city, right? So it'd be one of those big roads, right? And there's like no traffic, none whatsoever, really. I'm turning and I see this vehicle oncoming and I see the signal light. So I'm like, okay, I happen to notice there's a pedestrian. So my attention now is on the pedestrian more so than it is on that oncoming traffic. Well, it turned out that oncoming traffic blew right into my Dodge Dart. Okay, that Dodge Dart, the passenger wheel was completely horizontal. It was pooched. Okay, my first thought was I'm effed up. Like not not any type of way. Like I mean I'm screwed. Right. Here I owe 15 grand for this vehicle and I've paid attention. So I was thinking that at best we're getting 7,000. We're supposed to move up in a month or two. And I'm like, we're screwed. First thought. Within like seconds after, I just remembered the one thing that I learned. And this was just after my new relationship with my new higher power, if you'll call it that. My new understanding was that I learned to always give thanks and give praise to no matter what situation I was going through, because I don't understand and I don't see the full picture. He does. He does. Um, so that's what I did. Said, I don't understand why I'm thanking you right now and I'm giving you praise, but I'm going to give you praise and I'm going to thank you and I'm going to thank that you know what you're doing. Even if I don't understand it, this does not make sense to me right now, but I'm going to trust that you know what you're doing. And lo and behold, I was fighting to get into a different vehicle. I ended up getting 12.5 grand for it, right? Which was five more grand than I thought, really close to what I owed. And then I was able to get into a Santa Fe. Okay, that Santa Fe, I didn't want it, but it was just what was pressing on my heart. Okay, we got into it. This is now going from a 5-seater to a 7-seater now. Anything that was more than a 5-seater would be great, right? I was like, okay, so now we have space for luggage or anything like that. I didn't realize that, in a month or two later, our family would go through a big change, and our oldest son went through something very traumatic with his other part of his family, causing him to then now live with us. So if here's the thing, this is why you give praise. And this is why you have gratitude for things you might not even understand. Don't cherry pick, because I didn't see or understand what was going on. But God knew that we were going to get another child, another kid, and we were going to need a bigger vehicle in order to make that all work out. And that's exactly what happened. We got a 7-seater, which now we sit 6, and we have one extra space, which gave us the space for, right? I had no idea that that stuff was going to happen. And I was actually pretty upset for a while there that we are getting a stupid Santa sleigh, right? I was like, why am I, I want a vehicle. I want a car. I don't want this Jeep. Hey, um, I want a vehicle, like I want a car, something good on gas, right? The Santa sleigh, like I guess it's a Jeep, and I'm going up to BC and different things like that. I didn't know, right? And that's exactly why I learned to always give thanks and praise to even the worst of times that I think, because I just don't understand or know what's really going on.
Nice. Scotty, you want to comment on it?
Mm, yeah, that's a powerful story. Um, I guess this is so my favorite gratitude quote is from Michael J. Fox, and this is after he's this is a pretty recent quote. He goes, "With gratitude, optimism is sustainable," and that's I think I think the process of becoming grateful for different things that have happened in my life, the order they've happened, you know, uh, it returned optimism into my life, right? Like I found addiction beat me down so bad that I expected the worst all the time, right? And you know, so going back even to getting clean the first time, uh, and this is my favorite step one quote, is that I was the last to know. I was, 'cause everybody around me could see that uh, using was fucking up my life, but me, you know. And they pointed out to it, and it was like, oh, that makes sense. It makes sense. And the first thing I ever felt going to a meeting, I can remember the first meeting I went to. I can remember the first meeting I bailed on going to. I remember that experience too. But I left feeling better than when I went in, and I realized in hindsight that that was hope that I was feeling when I first came into recovery. I hope, and that was the start of a shift in my general outlook that was greatly propelled by gratitude. And there are there's two ways I feel gratitude for my past. One is the fact that um, my mental health my mental illness is in remission, not my mental illness is in remission, and I've got a few days back to back in the program, and life's pretty good, even if I do run a bit of my own self will a little bit too much. Um, but where was I going? I lost my train of thought. I apologize.
It's all good. You know what? You'll get it back. I mean, that's how we roll, right? Bed goes
Hmm.
up and bed goes down. That's one of the things that I have not fully got back is my memory and my focus. That, what made me a great mathematician is partly gone now.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, and sustaining long equation and formulas is just not the same in my brain anymore.
Hmm. Oh,
You,
I remember
there
where
we
I was
go.
going
See, I
now.
knew if I filled it for a second.
Right. Uh, the phrase "our mess becomes our message," right? Because I realize now that the meandering path of my addiction and especially my recovery allows me to help a certain population of recovering addicts, right? Like one of my favorite things to do is we used to do. I hope it gets started again, but there's a mental health hospital near Red Deer in Pinoca, Alberta, and they have a ward there. There's people who have mental illnesses that are also fighting addiction, and we used to do panel meetings there every month or every couple of months, and that as far as service goes, that service has touched me the most out of probably any service that I've done because I've been able to go into an environment where I've spent time, right? Because my story involves mental hospitals and psych wards. I'm able to go into this facility with a couple of years clean and say, I mean, I've been where you've been. I've been on the medication you've been on. I've experienced the symptoms you've experienced. I was still able to get clean. And to be able to carry a direct personal message to a fellow addict is powerful, right? Being able to bring an addict to a meeting where then because like that's really all you can do, right? You can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. So you can bring an addict to a meeting and then let NA do its magic, or the higher powers do their magic, however you want to see it, right? And so for me, a lot of my gratitude comes from the fact that I can help people in similar situations, or help indirectly with, like I can't remember the amount of times that someone's come up to me and been like, I have a family member struggling with addiction, or I have a family member struggling with psychosis, or like what can I do? Where can I go? And I can say, like, well, for your family member, these are some of the meetings we had, and for you, there's such thing as Al-Anon and stuff like that. So that's where a lot of my gratitude comes in, is being able to tailor make someone's help. Like give them the roadmap of my recovery to help them not stay in hell as long as they have.
And I've said it before. I think it's really important to understand, like, it might not seem like something to be grateful for at the time when you're going through it, right? But a lot of times I believe so much that it is custom and tailor made for us, that experience, to the point that how it how it happens, what is all involved, who is all involved, is very personal. But the thing is majority of what we go through is all about connecting us,
Mhm.
right? Like the stuff that the and we're talking a little bit earlier about trauma, right? Talking about trauma. Okay, well, it's the trauma, it's those type of things that people connect with, right? For instance, giving an example, right? The fact that people are raped, sexually abused, right? That is a lot more common of a scenario or a situation than a lot of people, I think, would actually realize. Believe the statistics said it was 2/3 of the population
I bet that's
has
low.
been,
That's
yeah, 100%, and that's lowballing it, right? So when myself, I've been raped, right? When I was a kid, I was raped. Okay, for years, did not make any bit of sense to try to be thankful or grateful for that. But now, understanding it years down the road, allowed me something to relate to other people with,
Mhm.
to connect with other people, right? Me and these people might be completely different people, that nothing would really resonate with each other than that fact. But it's that fact that we could connect and have something very special, right? And that's what I say. That's what I say to a lot of people, and that's what I'm trying to say to my loved ones right now, that are having a really hard time going through the hurt, the trauma. Here's the thing: we've already been through the worst of it. We've been through the worst. What has happened is happened. You can't take that away. Doesn't matter the amount of drugs or anything that you try to get into you to try to forget. It's been done. The beautiful thing is what gets to happen after the healing, after you push through the trauma of that and move past that. Then now you get to connect with other people and realize that you're not the only one, right? You're not, as you were saying, so terminally unique that you can't connect with anybody else in the world that has never been through what you've been through. No, I get to relate to other people now because through my experience. And that's exactly when you hear me talk about hope all the time. You'll hear me refer to hearing other people's experience. That's how hope is created in us, is by hearing other people's experience. Right? So when you go through your trauma and you've been through we already opened that can talking about being raped, right? When I open up that can of worms and I go through it and I heal from it, and then I learn, hey, there can be something that's good that comes from this experience. I go and share with other people. All of a sudden, I'm giving them hope, right? I'm creating what seemed to be hopeless to be hopeful. And that's what God intended it for it to be. That's truly why I think that is how hope is created. And that's why God allows us to go through experiences like that. Is so that we pass on this experience and it gives the world hope. Right. So
Well, we are responsible for our recovery, you know, and part of that is taking that trauma and turning like, you know, I heard a really amazing share by a lady about 2.5 weeks ago. I went on a random meeting and just happened to, and it was about emotions and trauma. And this lady said, you know, now I use them as signposts, right? It's she uses them as the direction of where she needs to work on in her program. So, you know, if what is making her uncomfortable is where she needs to address.
mhm.
And so instead of running from it like we've spent our whole life doing, you know, what is it? Face everything and rise is one of the acronyms for fear. And uh, so we can turn it. And first thing we got to do though in turning that is exactly what Kalem said. It's sharing that. Because by
Mhm.
sharing that, that's the first step in facing it. Even if you can't change it, even if you can't dissect it, even if you can't accept it yet, bringing your awareness to it is going to be that first step of change.
Mhm.
Do you got a
Okay.
question you want to ask, Caleb?
Okay.
I think Scotty's got another one.
We know he's got another one. I got I got to think how to word this one because it has been brewing, but I just want to word it properly. Um, in regards to the crumble, right? Have you? I guess it's a pretty straightforward answer for myself because I kind of answered it already. But I just wanted to hear from your guys' end. Have you guys played out the tape of what it would have been like had the cookie crumbled a little too much?
Mhm.
Meaning like so like um for myself, like I said, there was a fork in the road, and it was either that I went recovery or I went and took my life type deal. Was it the same for you guys, or like what would it look like if you didn't go this route? Would it? I mean, I'm sure we would all eventually end up with saying that it would have led to death, but
I would have died for sure. Not
right,
even
Yeah.
like I had died. I
right,
had died. And had I jumped right back in the ring, I know my body wouldn't have taken it.
right,
Like I really felt that this last 15 months, as of actually fucking 210 tonight, it'll be 15 months.
woo,
Um, uh, uh, but I really felt like the last 15 months has me been trying to rebuild my health. Like
right,
it is it I could barely breathe deep breaths. Like I was in rough shape at that
yeah.
point. I would if I had not changed course, I would be dead. No questions asked.
Okay, so
Scotty,
so so that is good. Now, more so, I guess where I'm trying to go with the question though is, have you realized or put together through any step work what you would have done to your wife or your kids or whoever? Have you kind of played that tape out on what it would have been like for them?
it
Or
would have
has
been
that
horrendous. It would have been
right?
horrendous. You know, like um I hate to say it, but I feel like suicide is the ultimate selfish act in the world because you are leaving your entire mess behind for everyone else to deal with.
Yeah.
Emotional, financial, physical. You know, like they have to fucking bury you. You don't even bury yourself most times. You know, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but like the
Most
term,
times.
like the turmoil it would have been inside my family would have been devastation. You
Yeah.
know, and you know part of the thing that gets me through some of the hard days is fighting to be here for them. I
Yeah.
know that your recovery has to be for yourself, and I want it. I want it, but
Yeah.
I don't just want it for me.
Yeah.
Like like I want it so that I have a chance to be here for them, so that I have a chance to right the ship that I fucking dashed on the rocks. So that I have the chance for them to know that deep down in my heart, I wasn't that fucking villain I felt like I was at the end.
Yeah.
You know, like a lot of those bad choices, I just won't make straight.
Yeah.
And it's important for me, for them to know in their heart that they are as important as that drug was. You know,
Right.
but because I think that, you know, for my daughter, you know, and she may or may not feel this or admit this, but I just can't help but feel that as a child they don't understand when you're ignoring them over substance, that they're like that it's not an importance thing, it's a fucking disease thing, but how it comes across can be scarring to them to
Yeah.
not feel important in your heart.
Rejected. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, so
That's huge.
yeah.
I got a two-part to that question, but first I want to hear from Scotty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I definitely, I'd either be dead or permanently locked in an insane asylum. I think for me, that's where I would go. For me, part of it too is that I makes me feel like I'm really super old when I say this. That drugs weren't the same back when I was still using um, as they are now, because they're not. And there's drugs out today that I would probably do because when I okay, I'm gonna back up a little bit. So uh, there are drugs that I've never done, and the only reason I've never done them is because they were never offered to me, right?
Mm.
And with the the drugs that I see on the streets now, I would probably take whatever was offered, and I would probably suffer the consequences. And the reason I say that I would take them is because when I relapsed, this is the last time, my using was different. NA had killed my using. And the way that manifested for me was that when I used to, come to from a binge or a bender, whatever you want to call it, and I would feel guilt, shame, or remorse about what I had done. When I relapsed, that guilt, shame, and remorse came after the first toke, the first drink, right? It did as soon as I consumed a substance, guilt, shame, and remorse hit me like a ton of bricks, and I had to use harder to get rid of them all because that's what I was looking to run from anyway. So I know for a fact that if I was in certain situations and I was using, that if whatever people offered me, I would take, and I don't think that would end very well for me.
Mm. So the second part to that question is because I know it's obviously it's different for all of us, but what kind of work did it take for you to understand and realize that? Because here's the thing that is something when we come into the rooms, when we come into recovery, it's honestly some of the last things on our mind, right? A lot of times we're hurt by loved ones. And so we're not even remotely thinking about anything that we're doing affects them.
Hmm.
But how long did it take and what kind of real hard work did you have to go through in order to realize what you realize today? We'll start with you, Scotty.
Um, hmm, that's a tough question. Not tough.
Right?
There's a lot to unpack in that question.
Yeah.
Um,
Loaded.
you know, one of the things that I did when I came into recovery was I watched and I paid attention, especially to people. And I've always been a bit of a socially awkward guy, so it's easy for me to hang out in the back and just watch people, right? And they say that the difference between a wise man and a smart man is that a smart man learns from his mistakes, and a wise man learns from the mistakes of others. So I was able to see other people go through things, right? And when they came out clean, that was like a huge win for everybody, right? And especially, when someone goes through hardships and they do it clean and they do it with a bit of grace, um, that's really uplifting for me, especially when it's a situation that I may or may not have to go through myself, right? Like when my dad passed a year and a half ago, I had seen other people go through the death of a parent clean, so I knew that other people could do it, which meant that I could do it. Um, the one thing, so okay, this is where the crux of what you're talking about comes. That question comes. I was in a meeting once, and I had a couple years clean, and she's still around today, a member here, and she was talking about she had a daughter that was in active addiction, and in her share, she was talking about like waiting for that phone call or inability to sleep at night and all the worry and the hardship that she was going through with her daughter that was in active addiction. And I heard my mom's voice in her voice, right? Because I always thought, like, well, I'm not if I'm not stealing from my mom, I'm not really directly impacting things, at the time, like when I was living at home, I thought I hit it well enough. And then when I was living in Alberta and using, we're 3,000 miles apart, 4,000 miles apart, so what I'm doing isn't really affecting her. And then I realized through my friend's share that I was deeply affecting the loved ones and those around me.
Mm.
And that was a real wake up call for me because I've come, I've heard that an addict's sphere of influence is 15 to 20 people. And that's both in active addiction and in recovery. So I
Mm.
wanted I wanted to be on the right side of that influence.
Right. And you, Milan?
Can you repeat the question? Because I got so into Scotty's answer, I was like thinking about so
Yeah.
many venues in my brain.
No, I get it. Yeah, so the second part to that question is we do come to realize the effect that of our living, what it was doing to the loved ones around us. How long did that take, and what kind of work did that take you to go through in order to realize that or have some sort of understanding?
So I saw some of the effects of my actions in my addiction. Even as much as I was delusionally trying to hide it from myself, I could tell I could tell what it was doing to our family. I could tell what it was doing to the overall peace of mind of my closest loved ones. But it wasn't until I did the step work. Like, they call this a program of action. And for anybody that's new and out there, people will suggest to you all day long to do the steps. And I just don't, I would not have survived in recovery without doing the steps.
Mm.
I would not be here today without doing those steps, because the steps are the only thing that changed how I can live, can see my actions, can see the consequences of my actions, and can see how I've affected the other lives. And without until I did my step 4, like I've said it before on this podcast, man. When I started my step 4, I was like, fuck, man, I got like 21 people here. I was like, you guys can line up on the left to apologize to me, because my resentments, I was ready for apologies. And then it was like, oh, my part, my part, my part. And then all of a sudden I'm like, shit, man, I gotta make a lot of calls when I leave here with some apologies. But when I started, I was like, man, this person and that person and that person, they all owe me some apologies. So, like, that was, like I said earlier in this podcast, that was my point of awareness. That was my point of conscious awareness. And that was, I would like to say that it was like 2/3 of my damage was brought to my light, because I do feel like every round I do of the steps, I'm peeling another layer on my onion. And I
Mhm.
just don't think that I could see the inner layers. And there's times now where I might be somewhere somebody might share, or I might be doing some step work even with a sponsee, and they mention one thing about what they've seen happen in their family, like, and it dawns on me, and it's like, me too, me too. I've I literally have hurt that person I love in that way, and I've been completely ignorant of it for now, until now. And and that's my day-to-day living immense. Like, my very first thing I can do to unravel that damage is to stay clean. And not being fucked up is my mission. And that comes with me, like, you know, I used to have hope that I would be able to find happiness in sobriety. And now I have faith that I'm going to live a great straight life as long as I keep doing my program. As long as I keep myself in the middle of the road I'm on right now, like, I have faith that this program works for me. Like, when my brain is just all about recovery, it's like that's what you focus on becomes greater. I'm not focused on addiction anymore. I am focused on how to be better in my life. And that's the whole point of like, why don't you see the title addiction on this podcast? Because we're not focused on addiction. We're focused on our recovery here and the freedom rising in our hearts, and I suck a lot of days. I had like 3 days of shitty food and candy from Wednesday to Friday. I woke up Saturday, had like epic fucking argument with my wife, had a fucking everything I touched turned to poop. Like, I could not instigate an interaction that didn't end up making me feel like I was attacking the world, you know? And it got to a point by about 10:30 in the morning. I was like, okay, whoa, what is going on here? Like, this, first of all, this isn't who I want to be. This isn't how I want to affect the people I love. And I want to have somebody around that I love tomorrow to still spend time with. And it's certainly not going to happen if I'm driving them all away with anger and rage, you know? And I realized, okay, man, like, I've been eating junk for 3 days. Every fucking day I've been going to bed so stuffed that I can't sleep right. And for me, what I've come to recognize now is that sleep is my first cornerstone on being open-minded and being compassionate and tolerant. And
Mm.
without sleep, I cannot even start to have a good program. And so I literally went back into bed. and which like it shows how tired I was because I fell asleep for an hour and a half. I woke up, I had lunch, and I fell asleep for another hour and a half. Like that never happens to me in the day. And it just shows that I was like a tired little baby who was like fucking sitting in his diapers crying, and you come and check, nope, there's no poop there. And I just needed to fucking go to bed. Like, and and I haven't had a day as shitty since then. Like, I needed to reset my sleep pattern. But
Mhm.
so for me, it was like that awareness of how I affected people
Mhm.
came inside the treatment center. But it's also come almost every day that I've been out. Like one of the hardest things was, that I started making my amends, and the first couple went really well. There was a lot of forgiveness, there was a lot of love, and the third one was with my daughter. And one of the things my sponsor told me to do said, hey, the last thing you say is, if there's something I missed, what can I do to make it right? And when I asked her that question, it broke my heart, man. She's just like, I can't even unpack it all right now, Dad.
And
You know,
I think that's really why. Well, okay, would you say that's for anybody that is in a program and they're newer and they're listening to this and they get this eager, because we've all been through it. We come into recovery, we start feeling good about ourselves. Now we're like, okay, now I want to go make it right with my family. I want
mm,
to go make it right with the people I'm around because I'm around them and this is what I got to do. But there's steps for a reason. It's the
don't
process.
skip a step on the way to men's ever.
No, no,
I, I,
because
I'm,
it's
and
you're,
don't make an amends without talking to your sponsor first.
yeah,
Like we are coming from the most selfish point in our whole fucking life. The
yeah,
last thing we're good at is knowing how we affect other people.
yeah.
I did it, man. I did the 2 week amends. I was 2 weeks clean. I'm
How'd
trying
that go?
and I'm trying to make amends to people, and it did not go well.
No, no, because it's still right from that selfish point where
Yeah,
it's like I need to do this, you
yeah,
need to do, and like, man, it's like talk about the point where you need to not have an expectation is on an amends.
mhm,
Mhm.
You know, like I set myself right up. It was like, do good ones, and here we go. This one's gonna be great. My life's gonna be like,
first
I'm like,
one.
I'm like, whoa, let's ride a Pegasus with a rainbow. Come on, Care Bears, unite. And then, and then it was like, oh, I actually really hurt someone I loved, and it's just gonna take a lot of time.
Hmm.
And that's all there is to it,
And when
you
you
know?
and you got to be ready for that, right? And that's the biggest issue.
I don't
I
know
think people
really
aren't
if you can be ready for that the first time.
right.
But you have to have acceptance for it when it occurs because it is the wreckage of your actions. You
But
know?
the chances of you being somewhat prepared for that by the time you get there is a lot better if you do it through the steps.
Yeah,
Because
like I
then you,
didn't skip a step when I was doing it. Like I did
yeah,
not skip a step. But um I think that people can hide their pain from you as much as you hid your addiction from them.
yep,
That's what I think.
Mhm.
Like I think
Mhm.
it's really easy to look at a smile on someone's face for a few days and think, oh, everything's okay now. And it's not. It's just that the storm's gone by. But, like, there's still muddy water underneath the surface of that lake.
hmm,
And that shit
Yep.
takes time to settle down. And that was one of the things I learned is that, like, first of all, if we are really in this program to take responsibility for our actions, we have to take ownership and acceptance for the time it's going to take to fix that.
mm,
Like I used to do carpentry, and I remember the moment where it was like I could build faster than I could build. And in my mind, it was like, okay, today I've got to frame these four walls and I'm going to fucking put those rafters on. And it was like 3 days later, I was finishing the fourth wall. But in that moment, I accurately pictured all the action of doing that. And it's kind of like recovery. Like you can look at the steps and kind of see the outline of what you've got to do. But life just takes more time. And we don't decide whether we're working with warped wood or not, or if the nail gun jams, or if we have to go to the hardware store 3 more times. Like that's recovery.
That's how the cookie crumbles.
That's how the cookie crumbs. But you know what though? It's like what I've learned is that I crumbled all my cookies. You know,
Yeah.
Scotty didn't do it for me. Kalem didn't
Yeah.
do it for me. But
Yeah.
but that's where we are, right? Like we're here to be taking ownership for things
Mhm.
instead of running away from it, you know, and having that
There's
honesty and humility in those
Mhm.
moments. Because
Good.
man, like I I can't go on like it was. And I'm
Mhm.
not going back now that I've seen the tools. So where do we go from here? Progress towards perfection. Not
Mhm.
progress, not perfection.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
I really like in the 12 by 12 book how Bill W came back from that thing. He's like progress without direction is like aimlessly swimming around. He's like whether you don't need to be like marking your test on your progress, but it's got to be towards a direction. And why the fuck wouldn't you point it perfect? Like if you're wanting to do something and in the image of your higher power, then that's like that is,
Mhm.
it's like that's what to strive for. And you know
Mhm.
what? Man, there's moments out there. There's moments. They might be like half a second, but I'm just like, this is perfect right now.
Mhm.
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 Like even in our conversation here today, there's been just some moments where I'm like I wrote a song in the fall, and it was like, when is good enough? You know, when can we call it love? And it's like, because I had a couple days, and I thought, if life was only this good forever, is this good enough?
Mhm.
Like when am I going to be satisfied with the state of life? Like, it's not to say not to grow, because growing was part of those 2 days, right? Like, but is like, have I ever been at a point where I'm like, this is good? Like, if life repeated a week like this of like step work, walk dogs, music, friends, family, snuggle, repeat, is that good? Is that good enough? And I actually had a week where I said, yeah, like this is like if life just stayed right here in this endless stream of like sleeping, eating, evolving, sleeping, eating, evolving, sleeping, eating, evolving. I want to be in that flux, but I also
Mhm.
want to know that I'm satisfied with that.
My best friend there, he he was talking with God, and he was kind of wrestling with him in some of this work stuff, and he felt like God asked him. He said, "If I asked you to be a janitor, but it was me asking you, would that be good enough?" And he's like, I don't really want. I don't think I want to be a janitor. I don't know." He's like, "But what if you being a janitor one day would come across one person that I wanted you to come across to, and the whole purpose of that job for you was to meet up with that one person somewhere down the road in your life, and you redirected that person to the relationship with him." Said, "Would that be good enough?" He was like, it got really deep, right? He was like, "That's a lot deeper of an understanding than where I was taking it." Right? So quick, so fast are we to be like, if we do really feel like God is asking us to do something, we're like, it doesn't benefit me right now, or it doesn't benefit anything right now. But when is it good enough?
Yeah.
Right? And yeah, Scotty, you look like you wanted to say something there.
Oh, you do. I could see it, Scotty. Scotty, Scotty.
Um, No, I mean that's the crux of step 11, right? Is that we seek that guidance from a higher power. And I've I've a few people that I follow on like podcasts and stuff, and Peterson said, it's through our responsibilities that we find meaning in life. And I really like that. And I was thinking about that because it was like I can't complain, or I mean I can, but it's futile to complain about the cards I've been dealt. It's just about playing them to the best of my ability, right? So like it doesn't really matter why I'm an addict. It doesn't. It could be
Mhm.
genetic, it could be social, it could be nature versus nurture, all that kind of stuff. But what matters is the fact that today I am an addict and this is what I choose to do with my recovery.
But our actions also define us.
Yes. That goes I mean, faith without works is dead, right? Like I think the reason 12 steps got off the ground is because helping another addict or an alcoholic is so fundamental to the program, right? Like there's a quote, God's favorite people are those who help other people, right? And so in addiction, I was a hurt person and I hurt people around me. And I came into recovery and I started to heal. And an integral part of my healing is being able to help those around me.
Hmm.
So helping people or healing people heal people. And I mean, I think we should do a whole podcast on that after
Yes.
the the rise after the cookie crumbles.
I think so too. I think Brother Kalem here's got to go with his kids. And I want to say that I love you guys. Today was an epic podcast. I'm so grateful that you jumped in with us, Kalem. I know you had kids going on, and honestly, I couldn't hear one bit of noise from your
Yeah,
side of it. I don't know,
you're good.
like,
Same
and
here.
so yeah, I just want to say thank you guys, and so I've shortened the ending here. I'm just
Yeah.
gonna say, tune in next episode for more recovery fun. See you later, everybody. I love you guys.
Love you guys.
Please help us help others. If you'd like what you've seen here today, please subscribe and share this podcast and help us get to 100 followers. We're looking for interaction with our audience. So please email recoveryfreedomrising@gmail.com or contact Milan South Okanagan Starcic on Facebook with questions, topic suggestions, or just comments. We'd love to hear from you.